So, hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum to all, and welcome back with another amazing episode of Fahad's Journey Talk Show. I'm your host Fahad AI Wala, and I'm student and interview captain at Rehan School Online Academy. So, welcome back with another amazing episode. I welcome to all of you on our another amazing episode, which is the source to explore and to share others' life journeys and to get to know about what is going on in their lives and what are the challenges they have faced you know and it's really important, and it's very obvious that their challenges shaped who they are today. And we all face challenges in our lives, and which are very important. Sometimes our challenges teaches us some things which we just forget in our life. So, as well as today we have truly remarkable and an amazing guest, Deb Krier, who is also a podcaster. So, Deb Krier is a multifaceted professional known for her roles as a LinkedIn strategist, marketing expert, social media advisor, and host of the Business Power Hour. She is also the founder of Wise Women Communications LLC, a full-service marketing and public relations firm. Beyond her professional endeavors, Deb is a cancer advocate and survivor, having faced multiple cancer diagnoses since 2015. Her journey has inspired her to establish Trying Not to Die Live, a platform dedicated to supporting individuals navigating cancer. So today I'm very excited to explore Deb Crier's amazing life journeys and how she survived from a very strange and very difficult condition, you know, and to be honest, it's very rare in Pakistan, and somehow it's very common also. So usually we face such cases where the individuals who are suffering from cancer, they just immediately died after being diagnosed by this disease. So you're a motivation, and you're inspiration for the pupils who are still suffering from cancer. So hi Dave, and welcome to the show. How
Hi,
have you
Fahad.
been?
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be a guest on your program. This is going to be so much fun.
Thanks, Dave. It's honor for me to have you. It's my privilege to have you on my show and to explore your strategies as a podcast host as yourself.
Mhm.
So, Deb, what are the things that I didn't mention about you? Like, what are the things that we still don't know about you? Do you want to add something in your introduction?
Well, I live in Atlanta now, which is interesting, but I am from Colorado. I grew up in the mountains of Colorado at an elevation of over 8,000 feet. So I grew up with a lot of snow, a lot of ice, things like that. And you won't believe this. My graduating class in high school, which was a really long time ago, I had 32 in my graduating class. Can you believe that? Um, but yeah, I love what I do. My husband and I have dogs and cats. We don't have kids, but I love my business. I love my podcast. And I really love helping others. I think that's probably the biggest thing is I just absolutely love being able to help others.
Exactly, Dave. And dogs and cats are very common,
Mm-hmm,
in foreign countries, especially in America.
mm-hmm,
It's my experience that usually um, American pupils pet dogs and
mm-hmm,
cats, and they're
mm-hmm.
very friendly with
Right.
them.
Mm-hmm.
I
They're
usually
almost part of
watching
our
the reels.
family. Mm-hmm,
Exactly,
mm-hmm,
that's what I mean to say. Pets are kind of your family members.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If we take this, so Deb, first I wanna start from 2015,
Okay.
where you diagnosed by cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that moment? when you diagnosed by this disease, and what you
Mhm.
were doing, like what was your profession and
Sure.
working?
One of the things that we do here in the United States is typically go for an annual checkup. So, once a year we go to the doctor, we, do everything. And so for a woman, we also have a mammogram, which is a detailed x-ray. And I had that and it came back and they said that I had breast cancer. But they said not to worry. We don't think it's anything to be too concerned about, and it did turn out to be something that was much more serious. And a very interesting journey because they for several months I was not all that concerned, and then they did say no, it's going to, you're going to have surgery, you're going to have radiation. And I chose the traditional Western medicine approach to dealing with cancer. I had chemotherapy, and then I had surgery, and then I had radiation, so massive x-rays. But a lot of people choose something very different. And I tell people you have to choose what is going to work best for you. But I was working, this whole time. And I remember when the doctor finally told me, hey, this is going to be more serious than what we thought. I told her, I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. Right. You know, and she looked at me like, you don't know. So I did have quite a few complications. And then along the way, I had two other types of cancer that were diagnosed. But I have a very, very good medical care team here. I was very fortunate and still am that I have very good health insurance, which I know is an issue not just here in the United States, but in many places. And it but it has been definitely a challenge. But part of why I think it has worked for me is I did keep working almost the entire time. As long as I had internet access and my laptop, computer, or my phone, I could keep working. And that actually gave me something to be focusing on as opposed to being sick.
Oh, that's pretty awesome to get to know about this. And Deb, um, like I'm still curious that what was your passion? Oh, sorry, what was your profession?
Mhm.
When
Okay.
you,
Okay.
yeah, at that moment.
So my company is a marketing firm, and I focus on providing, for the most part, social media for my clients. And so the clients that I work with send me their things to post on Facebook, on LinkedIn, whatever the platform is, which is why, as long as I have my phone, I can be working, right? Because they send me the images, I post them on their Facebook pages. And I've got about 13, 14 clients that I do that for every single day. I also do other things with my company, but that's the primary focus of it.
Like after being diagnosed
Mhm.
by the cancer, how, I can understand that all the things were messed up. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
So
Mhm.
how you were dealing with this, and you just immediately after being diagnosed by this, you immediately like stopped working at your company, or what you were doing when you were
Mhm.
being
Yeah.
diagnosed by the cancer?
So I was okay for a while. And so I just kept working. I was having treatment and I was working. But I developed a complication and I was in the hospital very, very ill for about 7 weeks. So I didn't work during that time. But then after that, I did. I went back to work, and even and working at the same time as dealing with cancer. I mean, I had a treatment for my cancer yesterday. And I was working that entire time, just sitting there with my phone, and working. And you know, it, it, it's different for each person. But like I said, for me, that gives me something to focus on, is to think, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and my clients have been wonderful, and it's a challenge, right? If you tell somebody you're working with that you're very ill, they might say, well, then you need to go focus on that. Or they might say, you're not going to be able to do what we need you to do. My clients said, what can we do to help you? And I think that was obviously one of the best things, because there are times where I will have a couple of days where I just can't work. And they understand that. And but it is definitely a challenge for anybody who's dealing with any type of serious illness and trying to work.
Exactly, Deb. It's really a challenge to work, and you're suffering from the
Hmm.
illness.
Hmm.
Illness would be anything, any illness,
Right.
but it's an illness, which
Hmm.
is not a good thing for us.
Hmm.
So, um, could you tell us more about your company? That which kind of company do you have, and
Sure.
like, yeah, all of that
Hmm.
related to
Right.
your company.
So my company is called Wise Women Communications. You mentioned that in your intro, and I started it over 20 years ago. I started it after I got laid off from a corporate job, and I thought, I don't want to go back to do that. I want to be my own boss, right? That's why a lot of people start their own companies, is they want to be their own boss. And it has worked obviously for over 20 years. I really enjoy it. Now there are times where I think, maybe I'd make more money or do whatever working for somebody else, but I like being my own boss, and setting my own hours, things like that. It's one of the things that I really like is I get to choose who I work with. Now, sometimes that's a challenge for small business owners, right? Because we have bills that we have to pay. So sometimes we might have to work with people that we might not always want to work with, but we need to be paid. So but it's been a great journey. I obviously hope to continue it for quite a long time. And it really is something that I enjoy. Now, I know that there are people who don't want to be small business owners or even big business owners. They need the structure of working for someone, and I think that's one of the things that people had a lot of challenges with during COVID. When here in the United States, we went for about 4 months or so where people could not go into their offices. And then they were told, okay, it's up to each company. So, like my husband, who at that point worked for a very large company, they told him, you're going to work from home. He never went back. He continued to work from home until he retired. They just liked having that virtual type of environment. But I think that's also, that was one of the things that people have challenges with in things like that, is we get lonely. Who do we talk to? Who are we getting support from? So that's where I think it's very important to develop a great network of people that we can talk with, and maybe we meet with them in person, or maybe we meet with them virtually. Maybe we meet with them from around the world like you and I are doing. But we can't work alone. We need to have that support from others.
Exactly, Dave. And like, you prefer business, you
Mhm.
know, to as a career.
Mhm.
And yes, you brought an amazing and very important topic. Like, most of these pupils prefer jobs,
Mhm.
but jobs are something, we don't know
Mhm.
when we will be fired by
Right.
the company owner.
Mhm. Mhm.
We yet we don't know, is our salary, will be
Mhm.
increased or not.
Mhm.
you know we
Mhm.
are like on specific salary. We just at the
Mhm.
by the end of month we will
Mhm.
get this salary.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so, like, when you started your business, what was in your mind? Your name of your company is also very unique, like
Mhm.
the wise woman.
Right.
So,
Right.
could you tell us about that? What was in your mind, and who gave you this idea to start this?
So, I had thought about, would I put my name on it? So Krier, communications or whatever. And I thought, well, that's kind of limiting. Um, and and I decided on Wise Women Communications, even though I have men who work with me, men who I work for, so it's not just women. But I just, at that point in time, I was very involved in the business community in several women's organizations. And I don't know why I like just the idea of wise women. And it just, it stuck. Like I said, I've had that name for over 20 years. But you mentioned something very interesting. It is a challenge what you name your company, wherever you are in the world. Are you using it to say what you do? So mine says communications. Now, people don't always understand, is that like telecommunications, like Wi-Fi or whatever? And I tell them, no, it's, communications like marketing, public relations, advertising, things like that. But, you know, are you going to, and I'd mentioned thought about using my name. Well, but that meant then I couldn't have somebody else as a business partner or, things like that. And so it's always fun to try and figure out what your company name is going to be. And then, at least here in the United States, you have to make sure that it's not a name that another business is using. For example, you couldn't here in the United States just open another store and call it Walmart. Walmart would have a problem with that, right? And so you have to find a unique name that stands for what you want to do. And I think that's where we end up with names that are totally made up, and you're like, I don't understand what this even means. But somebody did that because then they didn't have to worry about anybody else taking their company name.
Exactly, Dave. Name. Even when I started my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
I was also like finding for the name for my
Mm-hmm.
podcast. Before that I called it like Fahad's Show,
Mm-hmm.
but then I was thinking that it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
To give anything its own
Mm-hmm.
identity. It's very important,
Right.
whether it is your company, whether it is your podcast, but to
Mm-hmm.
give its own
Mm-hmm.
identity.
Mm-hmm.
When if a person will think about anything related to your company, so he will immediately
Mm-hmm.
recall your company's name,
Right.
the wise woman
Mm-hmm.
communication. So what do you think, how much it's important to like company's name or brand's name, how much what is the value of this?
I think it's very valuable. And they actually put values on those things here. I think one of the most valuable company names here in the United States is Coca-Cola. It's a name that's recognized around the world. If they were to sell the company, but when you hear that word, when you hear Coca-Cola or even Coke, you know what that means. And I mentioned Walmart earlier, right? When we hear these company names, it's exactly what you said. We immediately know who they are and what they stand for. It's what their brand is. And so it's very important for a business to establish that and then keep it. We can't be saying, oh, today I want to do this and today I want to do that. And because again, like you said, people need to remember Walmart sells or inexpensive clothes, food, things like that. Coca-Cola sells drinks. If Coca-Cola all of a sudden started selling tennis shoes, we get very confused. And so, and which I think is part of the reason why I say Amazon is a little confusing, because they now do a lot of things. Now they are still the big online retailer, worldwide. And so we know, and it's become a verb, right? I don't shop anywhere. I shop Amazon, right? Where does somebody buy this? Amazon, all of those things. But when you say that word, that company name, what it stands for. It is a challenge, especially if you think, okay, I want to do something else. Maybe you're a smaller business who does landscaping, so you're going around planting flowers and things like that. And you decide you want to do building construction at the same time. So is it going to be, Bob Smith's landscaping and construction? Well, that gets confusing. Do you start another company, which is what a lot of companies do? So they'll have subsidiaries and things. But you are so right that when somebody says that company name, what they stand for, good or bad. right? Because there are company names that we think of and we go, oh, I wouldn't want to work with them, or they have a bad reputation, or, whatever it is. Here in the United States, there are some companies and that do have bad reputations for whatever it is. And there are times, people won't work with them just because of that. Now, that might have been something that happened years ago, but we still remember that. And part of my background is in doing public relations and reputation management. So it's, how do you get past those bad things, or do you even care? Some of those companies are making so much money, they don't care.
Exactly. So, Deb, you mentioned earlier that you don't have kids. You have like pets,
Mm-hmm,
pet animals
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm.
dogs and cats. So, do you feel their value, or sometimes it happens?
One of the things I wonder as I'm getting older, and I won't tell you how old I am, and I have a birthday next week. Um, but you do start wondering, and I've talked about this with some of my other friends who don't have kids and are my age. Who's going to take care of us when we get older, right? And I also come from a very small family. There's not a lot. I just have one aunt and several cousins, and that's pretty much it. Now, on my husband's side, there's a whole bunch of them. Um, but yeah, who will take care of us when we're older? Now, in the States, it is, a little bit different, that we don't rely so much on family members taking care of us. I don't know. In a lot of other countries, you might have multi generations that are in one home, right? You see that a little bit here, but not nearly as much. But it is something where you do think about it, and more importantly, what is your legacy going to be?
Exactly, Dave. That's what I was trying to ask.
Mm-hmm,
But anyways, it just depends.
mm-hmm,
And I'm very, I really appreciate that the work you are doing at this age. It's really like appreciable,
mm-hmm,
and you're an inspiration for others as well. Like you're at this age, you're owning your company,
mm-hmm,
you're running your
mm-hmm,
podcast. Do you have like business or podcast partners, or
mm-hmm.
do you like
I
do as
do.
yourself?
So I've been doing the Business Power Hour for a very long time. I've recorded over 1,000 episodes. Now I know you've recorded over 300, so that's just incredible. I do two a week, and I started quite a long time ago. And it's funny that you mentioned names, because it was not named the Business Power Hour to start with. We called it the Socialite, and that was kind of a cute little play on words, because all of my guests were talking about social media. And so we were the social light, and that was fun, but there's only so many interviews you can do that are just talking about social media, right? And so then we switched to the Business Power Hour, and it's, I do have, I am part of my podcast is part of C-Suite Network, but I own it, so I can do whatever I want with it. My guests can do whatever they want with it. But I do have a producer, and she's been working with me for, I think we're getting ready to go on 5 years, so quite a long time. She's a virtual assistant. Now she actually is here in the United States, but she does all of the scheduling. She does all of the posting afterwards. But I do the research. I obviously do the interviews, and then I still do all of the editing for my podcast. And I know that there are a lot of other people that are podcasters who don't do that. I prefer to still do my own, but I also don't do an awful lot of editing. I believe that we say things like and well, and all those things that some people will edit out. On my podcast, it's a conversation, so I leave those things in. So I don't do an awful lot of editing. It's only if there's something big that happens that would be distracting. And so I obviously edit that out, but it doesn't take me very long to edit, and it is an hour long, the Business Power Hour. But and I also, most of our guests come to us. When we've been doing it that long, a lot of people know that we exist, and so they will pitch us to be on the podcast. But I still, will ask people to be on my podcast. Like I did with you. We're getting ready to next week record you as a guest on our podcast. So very excited about that. But I still do the majority of the work for my podcast, and I enjoy that.
Exactly, exactly. And Deb, do you think, do you know what I really found interesting and very, amazing about your podcast is that you don't edit too much,
Mm-hmm.
on your podcast, as you mentioned, that if someone happens like very strange thing,
Mm-hmm.
so then you cut it out. But anyways, you don't,
Mm-hmm.
edit it too much.
Right.
So that's the beauty of the actual podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If we added all the things, and we
Mm-hmm.
are editing like totally
Mm-hmm.
in our podcast, and we are applying too much in it,
Mm-hmm.
so what is the importance of
Mm-hmm.
it?
Mm-hmm.
People are very curious to get to know about the guest original
Mm-hmm.
life journeys, and
Right.
about their original
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they are curious.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cut it out all the things from
Mm-hmm.
their lives, so what is left
Right.
to to listen?
Right.
So Deb, which was the very challenging part of your life which left a very bad memory with you, and what you have learned from that part of your life?
Well, I think it would be getting cancer. Uh, and it's one of those where it's been good and bad. The bad part, obviously, the pain. All of those just icky things. I have had over 30 surgeries in less than 10 years. That's a lot. I tell people my scars have scars. But if I didn't have those scars, I wouldn't be here. So I'm okay with my scars. Uh, would I, and a big part of it was I had a very bad reaction to the treatment that I chose. So one of the things I do think about is if I knew now what if I knew then what I know now, would I choose a different treatment? I don't know. That's kind of one of those things. But I think it also, all of this made me learn what's important in life, right? There were 3 times on this journey where the doctor told my husband I was not going to survive. He just, they said, she's not going to make it. And I remember at least one of those times thinking, I get to vote, you know, and, but they were preparing him for the worst. And but I learned through all of that for one thing, life is too short. Don't put things off. Whether you're 15 or whether you're my age, which again we're not going to say. And so don't put things off. Tell people that they're important to you. Here in the United States, as we're recording this, it is Valentine's Day, which is the day to tell people that you love them, right? And so, but don't wait for just that one calendar day of a year. Tell people any point in time that you love them or you appreciate them. You might not tell your business associates that you love them, but tell them that you appreciate them. And so I think that's maybe the lesson is, no matter what the bad thing is, maybe it was a failure, maybe it was, just things didn't go well. What can you learn from that and go forward?
Exactly. Challenges are all about to learn from them, to do not
Mm-hmm.
remember
Mm-hmm.
them. It's not important to remember that, but it's
Right.
important to learn from the
Mm-hmm.
challenges. We believe that challenges come in our life
Mm-hmm.
to teach us any lesson, to
Mm-hmm.
teach any lesson to us. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to learn something. So is it still Valentine's Day? I thought, we have a
It
day
is.
difference.
So it's not even noon here yet. So yeah, so Valentine's Day just started. I haven't even opened my candy yet. And that's one of those Valentine's things that we do here in the United States. Everybody gives candy, because
Oh,
it's sweet. You're giving sweet people sweet treats. And so my husband
yeah.
gave me a bunch of candy and I gave him a bunch of candy.
Oh wow, it's really great. We have two um like memorable days. In here,
Okay.
in Muslim community, we have
Mhm,
a religious day, you
mhm,
know,
mhm.
and their Valentine's Day. So two things came at the same day.
Oh,
So it
okay.
was really, yeah, it was
Mhm,
really historical thing
mhm,
which ever had.
mhm.
I think that you know. So yeah, happy Valentine's Day from me,
Well,
and
thank
I
you.
wishing you a really great and amazing day and very cheerful and full of love. This whole mm, year and
Thank you,
whatever.
Fahad. And I wish you the same.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have just winded up all the things after evening where our day shifts.
Mhm,
After evening we have
mhm,
now another day.
mhm,
Religiously.
mhm,
So now, coming to the most important and most curious thing,
mhm,
which my mind was just, taking me there.
mhm.
I was just thinking that to ask some other things first,
Okay.
but it was just completely, taking me to this part of
Mhm.
your life, which is about podcasting. So yeah, we are just gonna ask some amazing and very helpful questions
Okay.
like that will benefit the listeners who are interested
Perfect.
in podcasting.
Mhm.
So first of all, when and why you started your podcast?
So I think it was back in 2010. So were you even born then? um, I
I
was a
born at 2010.
Okay, so see, my podcast is as old as you are. Um, I was living in Denver and I was asked to be a guest on someone else's live radio interview. And so I went and I did that, and clearly I like to talk. So I had a great time doing that, and I approached the station, and I said I would like to do a live radio interview, and have my own guests. So we started that, and that's where that all began. So it started as a live radio interview. I mentioned we called it the socialite. We I went into the radio station, so I think this really was before podcasting. I don't even know if people did podcasts back that long ago, but so we did it as part of the radio station for several years. And then when I moved to Atlanta, that meant obviously I could not go into the station in Denver anymore. So that was when we kind of switched to doing it as the business power hour and focusing on business type of topics.
That's awesome, Dave. And when you started your podcast, and
Mm-hmm,
yeah, it's true that there were no, like, majority of
mm-hmm,
the people were not doing. There were some
mm-hmm,
few people
mm-hmm,
who started or who are doing their podcast.
mm-hmm.
And for me, you're like Larry King. You have recorded over 1,000 episodes, which is a really great achievement. So for me, you're my mentor as a
Well,
podcast, and
thank
for me,
you.
you're Larry King.
Thank
And you're
you.
a little far from him.
A little
You're a
far.
little, yeah, little far.
Mm-hmm,
So yeah. So Dave, another thing which I never asked to
mm-hmm,
any podcaster is that I think that, as according to my experience, the energy, to
mm-hmm,
have lots of energy during your
mm-hmm,
podcast is very important. So what do
mm-hmm.
you think about it?
I totally agree with, and it's both. It's the host and the guest. Right now, I'm usually a pretty high energy person, and then I will. But I have had guests who have not been high energy, and it's a challenge for me. And maybe that's the way they always are. Maybe they're not having a good day. Maybe they're tired. Whatever it is, but it is difficult for me when, especially if they just are giving short answers. and you can kind of tell, sometimes I think, do they even want to be here? And I haven't had that happen very often, because when someone goes on a podcast, they kind of know they need to be engaging. They need to, which is why I love doing it on Zoom, right? Because we can see each other. Originally I started out, as I mentioned, in the radio station, and my guests were there, so we were in the same room. And then we switched, and I was using Skype, and it was just audio. So it's like having a telephone conversation with somebody. And then when we switched to Zoom and I could see them, I love that because it is much more easy to just be having a conversation with somebody. But it is a challenge when they're not high energy. And like I said, maybe that's just their personality. I try to, it's kind of one of those, do I dial back and be a little more subdued, or do I keep trying to be energetic, hoping that they'll be energetic? But here in the States, one of the things that we were taught a long time ago, when we were still really calling people on the phone, was they should be able to tell that you are smiling by the tone of your voice. And I think that we want that on our podcast too. Even when we're talking about serious subjects, we want them to know we're engaged, that we want to be talking with them, because I think in podcasting it's very much, you and I are talking, but we're also talking to our audience. And so how do we want them to be interpreting what we're saying? And if I'm just kind of blah and boring, they don't want to listen, right? So when we are either the host or the guest, we need to kind of keep up that energy.
Exactly, Dave. Exactly. And it's my own experience. To have really, high energy.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you see me now?
You do a very good job at it. You are very energetic. And for people who are just listening to this as opposed to watching it, Fahad is smiling. He is very engaging. And we are just having a conversation. And I think that's what needs to come across anytime when you're doing an interview with someone, is you're having a conversation with them. Even if you're telling them, about your business and you're wanting to sell things, you still want to do that in an engaging way to keep the listeners and the viewers wanting to pay attention.
Exactly, Dave. And I don't like those kind of podcasts
Mm-hmm.
where the host is just, reading questions, kind
Right.
of they have scripted,
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
it becomes very boring,
Mm-hmm.
for the guest also and for the
Right.
host. And the host is personally, as
Mm-hmm.
himself, he is also not that much
Mm-hmm.
engaging, and
Mm-hmm.
and how he engaged, because he is reading questions from somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and there are no emotions in it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So Deb, which was the very difficult episode for you, where any kind of strange thing would happen or something like that?
I've had episodes twice where I'm interviewing someone who has small children, and the kids wake up and start crying, right? They want mom, and it's been a woman both times. They want mom now. And so that's when I pause, because of course family is the most important. And so we pause, they go, they take care of the kid, and they come back. And so those are always and I had a person one time who, she said, I need to stop, I'm not feeling well. Oh my gosh, right? And so I didn't even use the first part. We just started over at another time because I wanted her to be comfortable. But I've had so many funny things happen. During COVID, when we first started, when we first started with the lockdown here in the United States, a lot of people didn't have home offices. So they kind of had to make do with what they did. And so I was interviewing a gentleman who was literally sitting at his kitchen table, and you could see the kitchen behind him in the Zoom. And in the middle of our recording, his son, who is about your age, came in very quietly, fixed his lunch. I could see all of this, right? And I knew he could see it too. And kid comes in, fixes his lunch, doesn't make a sound. The gentleman and I just kept on with the interview. But the really funny thing is, as the young man was done, he turns around and he waves. So he knew he'd been on camera that whole time. Um, but to me, that's part of the appeal of this is we're showing that we're human, that things happen. We've all gotten used to Zoom with, the dog, the cat, the kid, whatever appears, or you have technical difficulties. That's life. People aren't expecting perfection from us. They want to know that we're real human beings.
Exactly, Dave, exactly. It was really funny, and I would, imagine that how was that experience for you, and I would, like imagine that you were actually holding your laugh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I laughed.
Does that
I
happen?
laughed.
You laughed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's great, to do not hold your emotions, just show
Right.
to others.
Right.
So that, it's my own experience which I'm going to share, and
Mm-hmm.
because the reason why I'm going to share is because of the audience,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that there are some people who are currently listening us, and maybe it would happen, or it would happen in the future, or it
Mm-hmm.
would happen in the past, is that when a guest declines,
Mm-hmm.
the request, the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and at the moment or
Mm-hmm.
before some minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So how to manage that situation, because you have prepared for the podcast and now the person is declining.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had any kind of this kind of experience, please share
Right.
that
I
also.
have, and as I tell people, life happens. There are times where, something might, like I said, somebody might get sick. They might have another thing that comes up on their schedule. If they want to reschedule, I reschedule them. And it's never bothered me to need to do that. Things happen, and so if somebody all of a sudden says, "Oh my gosh, I can't record today," and obviously then you have technical difficulties. I was to be a guest on somebody's podcast a couple of days ago, and our power went out. Now I could have still done it on my phone, and so I did Zoom in, and she and I decided that was not going to work well, and so we rescheduled, right? And so it's all about being flexible. Now I had a weird situation where I was to be on somebody's podcast again as a guest, and she and I had talked before. We had conversations like you and I did. And she decided right before the podcast, she didn't want me to be a guest. I was not going to match her audience. And I was a little miffed, right? And but she knows her audience. And so I was fine with that. And it meant I had an extra hour that I hadn't planned on. But we have to do what works. And like I said, if somebody has to cancel, if they want to reschedule, we reschedule. I've only ever had one person who was to be a guest who just did not reschedule. And then I have had times where, it is called the Business Power Hour. So it is a full hour long. So I've had a couple of times where people have said, well, I didn't block off an hour. Now I do calendar invites. It should have marked that off for them. But, so there have been a couple of times where we had to do a shorter interview, but that was okay because I knew what they were going to be talking about was that important. Now, I did have one gentleman, an NFL, so National Football League player, who, and sometimes they kind of have an ego, right? Because they're a professional athlete. We started the interview, or we were getting ready to do the interview, and he said, "No, I can give you 15 minutes." And I told him no. And he had written a book, and that was what he was wanting to talk about on the program. And he said, "Well, I can do 15 minutes." And I said, "No, it's called the Business Power Hour for a reason." He paused, and then he was very apologetic. And he said, "I'm very sorry. My people booked me, and they clearly were not paying attention." And so he himself rescheduled, and we had a great chat at another date. But it's all about we got to go with the flow, right?
Exactly, Deb. It was really awesome, and yes, I think it's all about the luck also, if the
Mm-hmm.
person is in your luck,
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be
Right.
as a guest, because it's all
Mm-hmm.
about the luck, it's all about
Mm-hmm.
the nature,
Mm-hmm.
the creature, of
Mm-hmm.
you and me, who
Right.
have whatever he have
Mm-hmm.
planned, it is going to be just happen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was really amazing, Deb, to chat with you and to have this conversation with you. And as you mentioned about that your power went off, and it just reminded me that moment when my power went off, and
Mm-hmm.
we rescheduled
Mm-hmm.
for this date. Yeah, it usually happens, and it usually take the person into the
Mm-hmm.
depression, and or
Right.
sometimes
Mm-hmm.
tension kind of
Mm-hmm.
so thing. So we have to manage, and we don't have to take
Mm-hmm.
that kind of. Okay, so rest of the advice that I
Okay.
will give, absolutely. So what is your final piece of advice, Dave, which you want to give to the viewers?
Life is short. Whether you're Fahad's age or my age or anywhere on either side of that or in between, life is short. Tell people that you appreciate them, and and always try to do your best. Maybe it falls a little short, but that's okay. And I very much appreciate and honor that you had me as a guest on your podcast, and I am very deeply honored to be a guest on your podcast.
Thank you so much, Deb, and it was an honor for me to have you, because it was all about your permission. You granted me your time for this, and it just your time was really valuable for me for this podcast, to make this happen, and
Mhm.
you helped me to make this happen. So thank you so much, Dave, again for your most precious and valuable time for the podcast. And guys, I'm finally very excited to be as a guest on Dave's podcast,
Yep.
which is at Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So don't
Well,
forget to watch us,
it
and
it probably won't broadcast live until March, but we'll keep people posted.
yeah, I just forgot. Yeah, exactly. We will just record it on Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and it depends on Deb when she will upload it. And
Yep.
whenever she will upload it, I will share with you guys. So thank you so much, Dave. Again, thank you so much to all our respected viewers and listeners who are listening and watching to us, and are still listening and watching
Mm-hmm.
us. Thank you so much, and I hope you liked and enjoyed it. Um, you know, Deb's time was very valuable for me, and Deb has a lot of experience. She have experience as a businesswoman also, and she have very wisdom and experience as a podcaster also. And I've never met yet any person who have recorded 1,000 episodes, which is Deb, a big achievement for you. So, inshallah, meet you soon with another amazing podcast with another amazing guest to explore their life journeys and to, get to know about their challenges they have faced, to learn from them. Till then, stay peace and take care of yourself. Allah Hafiz. Goodbye.